Hey everyone, sorry about the delay, technical difficulties and everything. So this week on the Bittersweet, figure we could talk about coffee and tea and caffeine and how much we depend on it, how it's shaped around cultures and medical benefits and if the religious aspects and everything. And Luna's going to be joining us in a bit, but right now it's me and Nese. So welcome to the Bittersweet, Nese. How are you? How's your week been going?
Bonjour, Anin, Nese Indigenicas, Anishinaabe Minoa, Kevin Richard Shores, Indigenicas, Jaganashi Moog, Makwanan Dundame, Aki Minoa, Gawababigani Kagin, Dunji Bob, Moorhead, Minnesota, Nugumin Day, Chi Mi Gwitch, Jules, and thank you for allowing me these precious moments on the bittersweet with you. Hopefully, my babbling on in Babylon won't go on and have something of substance to it.
No, you're always welcome here. So it's been one of those days. The universe conspired against me, but here I am, just kicking at it.
That's the
So
beautiful thing about life. You got a choice of action or no action. And I think
this
it's
is true.
better
This is
to
true.
have some action than none.
So hey, Yama and
Moving
Luna
right
is
along. Chicka
joining us.
dunk, chicka
Yama,
dunk, chicka
Luna.
dunk.
Yama, Jules, Yama, nice. Sorry for the lateness.
No, you're all right. I had some technical difficulties, and I figured it out.
Cool. So, what have we
So,
got today, Jules? Did I interrupt you talking?
oh no, you're good. Um, Coffee and teas and caffeine and dependency and how they fuel us, how they motivate us, and then how they've shaped cultures and religious aspects, spiritual aspects, medicinal aspects. Coffee is it's one of those things that it's everywhere, but not a lot of people have like taken a serious look into it.
True. Well, I did a quick research. I knew a little bit about tea because I'm a tea connoisseur.
Yeah, and tea, other than the kinds of tea, I confess I'm more of a cotton. No, my knowledge is with coffee more so than tea, but they
So
both have caffeine. They both have caffeine.
they do. So you're more of a
Well, I
listener,
would
not
disagree. There are herbal teas that do not have caffeine.
This
yeah,
is
and that's what
true.
I was going to do. Talk about the tea and oh, I forgot to say hello to everyone out there. How's going?
Uh,
Talk about tea, and I found a beautiful native Aboriginal tea company, and I'm going to talk to you about that as well as herbal tea. So, a bit of history on normal tea, and some herbal tea, and some native tea. So,
awesome.
and how are you, Nose?
I am fair to partly cloudy with a 90% chance of participation.
Cool. And have you got your coffee?
I did have coffee this morning, so I allow myself 2 cups, but I have a visitor here, so I went with 3 cups today.
And I'm
So
just about to have my second cup of tea, that is.
And I'm on my second cup for the night. I mean, it's your morning, it's my evening, and it's been one of those weeks where it's like I need coffee tonight. I got to push through the heat and the rain, and it's just hot, super hot, steamy, cold. It's tiresome. So, yeah, like I'm saying, I'm on my second cup tonight. I was gonna break out my French press and get some coffee from the Apocalypse collection,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
I decided, no, I'm just gonna have some coffee from the cupboard. So tonight's blend is from Rwanda.
Rwanda. Ooh. Ooh.
It's one of those African coffees.
Yeah. Which is stronger, the Arabic coffees or the African coffees? Like, I'm not a connoisseur of
Well,
coffee.
those are one and the same. There are two different kinds of coffee beans. There's the Arabica bean, and then there's the Robusta. The
Mhm.
Robusta bean are the ones that come from Indonesia and Vietnam. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff with coffee. I mean, there's different kinds of coffee. There's the decaf, the regular coffee, and then with the regular coffee, there's the blonde roast or the light roast, the medium roast, and the dark roast. And then and the espresso machine, the first one actually was made in 1948. So I
Wow.
mean, and I was thinking that the espresso machine itself was an older invention than it was.
Wait a minute, Jules, back up for a second. I don't know much about coffee. What's the difference between what's an espresso machine and the other coffees like? Can you? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
confused. I
So
don't know much about coffee.
where do you want to start? I can
Well, I
I
know that you
can
have
take you to
cappuccinos
through the origins of coffee
and
up to modern times.
um, yeah, and the difference in coffee is like, what's the difference between a cappuccino and an espresso?
Espresso, it's a
Sort of.
cappuccino. A cappuccino does use espresso. The cappuccino is espresso with steamed frothy milk.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
Well, the major difference between espresso and a cappuccino is the spelling.
Obvious. But yeah, the rumor has it, according to legend, back in like the 10th century, there was a goat, or a sheep herder or goat, and his name was Caldy, and he noticed that his goats were eating beans, and his goats just couldn't stop kicking. They had all this energy. And supposedly, coffee originated from Ethiopia, which Ethiopia still produces coffee, but the vast majority of it actually comes from three regions, primarily Central and South America. But coffee can be grown in Hawaii, and Hawaii is the only state within the continent within the U.S. that actually grows coffee, and it's because of the volcanic ash that's in the soil with the other mineral deposits. And the other area that produces coffee abundantly is Asia. Um, the cappuccino was actually named by Capuchin monks. Those are the people that are credited with actually inventing the cappuccino. Around This is interesting because when I say coffee, coffee kind of fuels culture. Um, some of the first people that actually consumed coffee, they didn't actually brew it. They made it until they cooked it in like this ball and they gnawed on it all day. So they consumed the coffee, but they didn't actually drink it. Um, I'm gonna go off camera for a second because I want to get my dates correct. I knew some stuff and I wrote it down, made some notes last night, and I've got to go back and get my dates. I have the information, but I want to give you the approximate date. So, one moment, please.
So you said they chewed the coffee. So would
Yeah.
that mean that they're just chewing it for the euphoric effect of the caffeine?
Well, the
Uh,
first known consumption of coffee as a food was by a tribe called Oromos in Ethiopia. They took raw beans and cooked them in fat and squeezed them into a ball, kind of like a baseball sized ball, and they gnawed on it as snack food.
huh.
So it was the beginning of the 10th century when the first recorded cultivation of coffee, and it came from Ethiopia. And from Ethiopia, it migrated via the slave trade to Yemen, and Yemen is still one of a huge coffee producing area. And from Yemen, the coffee actually spread throughout the Arab world, and that's where the term Arabica comes from. Those Arabica beans come from the Arab world. And it was around 1550 when the first coffee houses opened up in Constantinople, which is now Turkey, Istanbul. And I have never had Turkish coffee, but Turkish coffee is a blend of sugar and water and coffee. And it has a special device it's made in. It's called an ibrik, and it's boiled 3 times and then it's served.
Well, that's different. Tough
Yeah,
coffee.
and then going kind of on the timeline of history, it was in England in the 1600s when coffee and coffee houses had spread to the Western world, to Western Europe and England. Um, Coffee played a part in the industrial age because up until then, especially in areas like London where the Thames was so polluted, you actually couldn't drink the water. So everybody typically had beer or ale was a preferred beverage. So, and like the typical work day, you would go to work, you would have your 10 a.m. beer break, you would have beer with your lunch, your evening break, you would have more ale. And then, so when coffee came in, it kind of revolutionized the way work was done in the sense that coffee came the substitute for the 10 a.m. beer, the beer or ale with lunch. So coffee kind of made more productivity because people weren't such in a haze or a fog trying to operate equipment and get stuff done. But the coffee houses were just as interesting as the coffee itself, because a lot of things actually stem from the early coffee houses. Um, the first coffee house opened up in London in 1652. By 1700, there were more than 2,000 coffee houses. And sometimes the coffee houses were actually referred to as penny universities because for a penny, you could buy a cup of coffee and spend hours listening to debates and conversation.
Wow, that'd be nice.
Um, the first ballot box appeared in London's Turk's Coffee House, where patrons could cast votes on political issues. And a lot of those coffee houses were headquarters for business organizations at the time, including like Lloyd's of London. The shipping exchange was at the Baltic Coffee House, and the East India Company at the Jerusalem Coffee Cafe. And this is what I think is interesting about coffee, in the sense that it was a new thing. People would come and they would sit and they would converse with each other. And then coffee houses were known for the mix of people that congregated there. And like authors such as Johann Swift, wrote Modest Proposal, Alexander Pope, painters like William Hogarth. They sip coffee at Will's Cafe, while Isaac Newton, he would frequent the Grecian Coffee House. Each cafe became associated with poetry, science, or business. And from the idea of coffee houses devoting particular discipline grew the idea of a newspaper with different sections, because people would go to them, note the conversation, and put them into publications that became the modern newspaper.
Well, I'm starting to see how coffee's become an intricate part of our life.
Yeah, I mean, even now, people congregate around coffee. I mean, they're go out for coffee after dinner, movie, date. Coffee is a good conversation piece.
Jeez. I do recognise something though. I remember as a young girl when I watched the Italian people and that drink their little short, really strong coffees. they always had water with them, a glass of water. They had a glass of water after their coffee.
Well, I mean, that's a little bit of the history of coffee, but there are different kinds of coffee. And the Americano actually is an espresso beverage. And what that was is the American soldiers during the war, when they were in Italy, the coffee was too strong for them, so they watered it down.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then there's decaf coffee, which is actually on the coffee timeline. Decaf coffee is kind of recent. It wasn't until like 1905 that the German merchant Ludwig, oh my gosh, I can't remember his last name, but he was a coffee apprentice. He wasn't a seafaring merchant. He was a coffee apprentice. Then his father was a coffee taster, and his father had passed away, and he thought that his death was because he drank too much coffee. So by coincidentally, by accident, he ordered some beans that got wet in the process of getting to him. And so when they dried out, he noticed that the flavor was still there, but the caffeine content was gone. And so what he did is he kind of patented decaf coffee, and he went in his labs, got his chemistry kit, and what he did is he extracted he washed it in like a saline solution of benzene. But back then benzene was poisonous.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Isn't that one of the poisons?
Yep. So he rinsed the beans with benzene, and ironically, the bad guys from WW2, they were against, like I was saying at the start of the show, religion plays an important part in coffee, because there are certain religions that are okay with it frequently. There are some that don't like caffeine at all. But this Ludwig, what he did is he created decaf coffee, and the supreme leader of the bad guys, he was like, "This is good enough for everybody. This is good enough for." So it became widely popular, but at the time, nobody knew that they were actually poisoning everybody.
Ha! Newsflash, is still doing it.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. So they don't. What's in the coffee today? How do they do that today? Do you know?
Yeah.
Obviously don't use that.
Coffee, decaf coffee now is typically done with a reverse osmosis wash. So, but yeah, I mean, well, there's saline in it, but it's not benzene.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been and I've seen coffee roasted, and you can actually roast coffee in your house. You don't have, I mean, an easy hack to roast your own coffee beans. It's just one of those popcorn poppers, hot air popcorn poppers. Just put your
Oh,
beans in and roast beans.
wow. I
But
thought you were going to say put them in the oven.
well, I have thoughts of mixing two kinds of beans, but yeah, it's a topic for another day. I mean, it might make me a millionaire, or it might make me a pauper. So,
There we go. You never know till you have a go.
yeah, coffee has evolved from
Hey,
its conception. There
if you
are
do that,
different kinds of coffee, different processes. There's like once it's washed, and because coffee actually literally comes from a coffee cherry. The picture that was actually, I can show what. Well, no, I can't, because I got to figure out where it's at. I can show pictures in a few minutes. So where were we? I mean, I'm going to be interested in tea, because, like I'm saying, I don't know a lot of tea.
well, I looked through here and looked there. I knew a little bit of tea about tea. I knew some things in history about tea. And I thought, nah, to talk to everyone, I need something nice and proper and accurate. So I went looking around the first day, and I had all these tabs out, and I'm thinking, this isn't working. Then I left it, and the next day I did it again. I came straight to a timeline, a tea timeline. I thought that's perfect, and it tells you everything, what's happening up until the present day. So I got that on tea, and I also we'll have a little talk about herbal teas and how good they are for you, and I'm sure Nese will jump in there. And then I'll show you a mob here have started a tea company called Rugenics, ROO, with Genix on the end. And basically they've got our traditional teas for all different ailments, and they're packaging them up and selling them, and I'll show you that if I can share my screen. It's worth having a look into. The prices are really generous, like, they're easy, affordable, and the teas are all natural, and they're native plants, what we used a long time ago. So I found that really interesting. And when I found them articles, I just thought, okay, that's it, that's enough to let everyone know what's going on. And I found it really interesting myself. So
Yeah, I have a keen interest in tea because there are so many different teas that help with ailments, whereas coffee, the only thing coffee serves is caffeine to get you going and to carry you through your day.
yeah,
I don't see many medical benefits of coffee.
I know one. In an emergency, if someone has an asthma attack, even a child, you give them a very, very strong black coffee, and it'll open up their airways, and they'll be able to breathe it. And it's like a temporary puffer thing, inhaler to open
Yeah.
their lungs. So coffee is good for that. I'm sure Nese knows some medical coffee stuff. Coffee for your skin, actually, the caffeine in the coffee tightens up your skin. So there you go. How I knew that. That's a weird thing to
Well,
know.
I mean, it is, the coffee grounds are a good exfoliant as well. The grounds actually are beneficial for a garden.
So, did you know? We'll keep going. I found my little article.
Oh,
So,
cool.
the weird thing I found weird about this, I'm going to read you the first one, and then the second one, and the time difference is what's got me. It's supposed to be a timeline.
Hmm.
Okay, so 2737, which is 2737 BC. Oh, I get it. It's backwards. That's why it's confusing. According to legend, Emperor Shen Nung was sitting under a tree, Camellia sinensis, while his servants boiled some drinking water. Dried leaves from the tree fell into the pot and infused with water, creating the first tea infused which the emperor enjoyed. So there you go. It was an accident. That's a legend, right? Whether it's true or not, I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I wasn't there when when Caldy saw that goat eat those beans. I mean,
Yeah, that's what I mean,
and if I was there, I don't remember.
I was thinking, and the servants sitting there going, I did that last week and no one noticed. In 206 BC to 220 AD, containers of tea found in tombs dating from the Han Dynasty. So that kind of coincides with that fella finding tea because it accidentally fell in there, and then they put it in containers. I'll move along because I find it's not boring, but it kind of be boring anyway. 600
Tea and coffee stuff, it's not boring to me, but if I'm talking about it, others are probably
depends what you like. I mean, some things someone likes, and you can't please everyone. But I like to find any knowledge because I like to grow every day with something new, something I didn't know, even if it's about coffee and tea. At least I didn't know it, and now I do. And my brain hopefully has grown that much bigger. And then I have tea and coffee and smoke and it shrinks again. No, I'm joking. All right. What are we? 618 to 906 AD. We're after. talk about that one time, BC and AD. Why did they split it up like that? Anyway,
To confuse us.
the Tang dynasty, tea became firmly established as the national drink of China. There you go. Tea became a popular drink in Buddhist monasteries because caffeine kept the monks awake during long hours of meditation. Hang on a minute. I'm just going to meditate, but I need something to keep me awake while I'm doing it.
Just a little bit longer. Coincidentally, I have found information that there was an early and some very similar, some monks, they did the same with coffee. They wanted to get in that meditative trance state, so they would consume coffee to help them prolong their meditation.
Hey, don't they live up high where the coca plant grows and they chew it so they can breathe better? That would keep them awake.
I mean, interesting. Coffee, cocoa, the cacao bean.
Cacao bean, yeah, I know.
And coffee, the cherry, it's actually a seed. So, I mean, we keep looping back to food and beverage.
Yeah, I know.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I know. It's one big circle. I found everything that I present ends up going in a big circle. What have we got? Late 8th century. Lu Yu wrote the first book entirely about tea, the Cha Jing, or the Classic of Tea. Lu Yu was an orphan raised and educated in a monastery. This inspired him to write the book on tea. Oh, look at that. He was educated in a monastery and he drank tea to keep awake so he could meditate. Japanese monks who visited China to study took this tea plant back with them to Japan, resulting in the beginnings of the Japanese tea culture. There's some interesting stuff in here. 960 to 1279. The date, I think it's the dates that make it sound boring.
No, it's actually not. From comparing coffee and tea, tea is far much older than coffee.
Wonder who was hiding the coffee plant. They're not having it. I'm keeping it to myself. They got tea. Where was I? Whipped powdered tea. Gee, I never heard of that. Became fashionable during the Song dynasty, but disappeared after the Yuan dynasty. Song dynasty sound like it would have been a nice time.
Mm-hmm.
1279 to 1368, Chinese people became accustomed to drinking steeped tea leaves. Later half of the 16th century, there is a brief mention of tea as a drinking. There's a brief mention of tea as a drinking among Europeans, mostly from Portuguese, who were living in the East as traders and missionaries. 1606. The first to ship back tea to Europe as a commercial import, however, were the Dutch, not the Portuguese. The first consignment of tea was shipped from China to Holland via Java. Wow, you can start to see why everyone started arguing. Tea soon became a fashionable drink among the Dutch, and from there spread to the countries in Western Europe. Due to its high price, it remained a drink for the wealthy. September 1658. First references of tea in Britain. An advert in London newspaper announced its availability in a coffee house. They got together. Referred to as the China drink, known as cha, tay or tea. Cha. Interesting. 1664. The East Indian Company began to import tea into Britain with a first order of 100 pounds of China tea shipped from Java. In Britain, the marriage of Charles II to Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese princess who was a tea addict, that's me, I'm a tea addict, was a turning point in the history of tea in Britain. Her love for tea established it as a fashionable beverage, first at court, then among the wealthy classes. Late 17th century. High taxes on tea brought about the smuggling and adulteration of tea in Britain due to popular demand of the masses who could not afford the expensive prices. It must be addictive. If tea addiction must have an addictive quality.
Well, it's the caffeine. I
Yeah.
mean, caffeine is equated to a drug.
hmm So the monks use drugs to meditate. Ta-da!
And we know the answer to that question.
In the form of caffeine, just so I don't get in trouble. Okay, where were we? Aha, the late 18th century. Tea smuggling and adulterations involved a higher volume of tea than the legal import amount. £7 million versus £5 million. With the adulterated tea, leaves from the other plants or leaves which had already been brewed and then dried were added to tea leaves. Sometimes the resulting colour was not convincing enough, so anything from sheep dung to poisonous copper carbonate was added to make it look like tea. Oh my, no wonder it made their complexion look bad.
Well, I mean, if it's any consolation, I mean, you were talking about dung with tea, the civet, the Cafe Luau, the world's
Oh
most
yeah.
the world's most expensive coffee comes from a cat-like creature called the civet, and it's upwards of $400 a pound of coffee for a coffee that's pooped out of. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, I got a story on that. I heard about that coffee. Never thought I'd ever see it because it's so expensive, blah, blah, blah. Went over to visit one of the aunties and she's like, my granddaughter just got back from overseas and she gave me this coffee. Would you like some? And I already, as you know, I don't really drink coffee. And I went, no, I'm not. Oh, but this is really special coffee. You can take it home if you want. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute. There's something wrong with that. I went, Art. She goes, what? I'm yelling from the lounge room in the kitchen. Art, what? That's not that coffee that's pooped out by them animals, is it? She goes, yeah, it is. Might drink it. I wouldn't. That's all anyway. Where was I? This is the best. Was I finished reading that? Carbonated ad to make it look like tea. Yeah, poison copper. December 1773. Now that should have rung a bell for all you fellas. That was the Boston Tea Party, a protest against tea duties that sparked off the American War of Independence, which eventually led to the US becoming an independent nation instead of a group of British colonies. Tea did that.
Boo, hiss. Boo, hiss.
According to history books. But the more I learn and the more I educate myself, I find these little tidbits that just don't seem like they're right or they're misplaced in the timeline of history.
So I'm an Aussie and tea wasn't a big deal here because it came over with the convicts. So enlighten me on the Boston Tea Party, please, my dear friends, because this is what we get told. We get told that it was this thing, and I want to know what it really was. Come on, Nese, spill the beans.
Coffee beans? I mean,
well, first, let me tell you about my experience with coffee. See, one time I was in one of these fang-dangle coffee shops in New York City, see, and these people were in there and they were reading the tea leaves. And I said, wow, what a great way of making some money, see? So I said, hey, I'm going to do the same thing with coffee grounds. So I started a business, put all my money I had into this business, and it failed miserably. I became broke and homeless because I thought I could read coffee grounds. You know how hard it is to read coffee grounds and how small they are, see? So because I borrowed some money from the mob, I almost found myself having dinner with the fishes with a pair of concrete shoes. But luckily enough, I scammed everybody and said, hey, whatever came to mind from the coffee grounds. And lo and behold, I brought in the new era of new age spirituality. Because be quiet, Alan. Sorry.
It's nice to have Alan around, though, isn't
No,
it?
but I mean, they say, AKA Alan. Uh, you can scry with tea leaves, but coffee can't do anything with coffee other than drink it.
Well, let's go back to the Boston Tea Party. And then maybe I'll throw out there my thoughts on coffee. Because I am a hypocrite. Because I do have coffee. And I remember when I was younger, in the first taste of coffee, I was absolutely, utterly disgusted. And I was like, I'll never drink that. Lo and behold, after 2 years, 8 months, and 23 days in the Navy, I was drinking coffee like it was going out of style.
Wow.
And in the Navy, coffee isn't coffee unless you put your spoon standing up in the middle of it and it stays there.
Ha!
Speaking of coffees and spoons, I think the earliest exposure I had to coffee, I must have been around 5. I've been coffee drinking ever since I was like 7.
Wow.
And then as I was growing up, and then when I was in high school and had a job and had to stay up late studying and getting up early going to work, I had coffee in the morning. But my earliest exposure to coffee, I remember I was always reprimanded as a child because I would always 2 things that I would eat with the spoon. And I don't care for Thousand Island dressing anymore because of that. But I was notorious as a child for getting a spoon and eating instant coffee out of the jar.
Jules!
I like coffee sweet and hot. Look, Mr. Moto, I'm a coffee pot. Give me a shot and I'll...
and it was, and it wasn't, and I don't think I did it for the taste. It was the texture of those freeze dried crystals. And
New and improved flavor crystals.
yeah, it's kind of the instant coffee during the days of the Civil War. Both Union and Confederate soldiers on their rifles, they had on their butts, on the ends of their rifles, they had stuff to grind beans. They would make coffee with what they had, and they would put sugar and milk in it and boil it down to a paste. And when it cooled, they would store it in a jar. And so when it came time for coffee, it was like so concentrated. It was almost instant coffee, but not quite. They would take a spoon of this stuff out of the can and add water to it. And that's how the soldiers in the Civil War had coffee.
Wow.
Well, that's what I do with my coffee in the summer. I do coffee the true master way. I have a French press because in the French, they know how to drink their coffee.
So you're telling me you got a French man in your cupboard that presses the coffee for you?
Yes, he presses the coffee beans and the grounds from a cheesecloth.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my little ceramic press pot. Gives me 2 cups of coffee.
1 second.
1001.
She's out.
1002.
Kick her out now because she was too late.
1004. 1005. 1006. She went to go get her French press.
I did. I left and I went and I got my French press.
They are?
Yeah. So what you do is you put your coffee in the bottom
grounds.
of it. Yeah, your coffee grounds. And you want your water not boiling almost at a boil, roughly around 200 degrees. And then you would just fill it up and then time it for 5 minutes so it steeps. And then when it's ready, you just push it down and everything. It's the best way to get coffee. I mean, when you have good coffee, quality people, I do like the French press, the push pot.
Right, I get it. I
Yep.
know what
And
you
there's nothing better than when you grind up your own beans and then right from the grind, your grounds go into your French press
I'm,
and talk about a nice fresh cup of Joe.
I say,
Especially when you know some local roasters and you pick up your beans and they're still warm from being roasted, and then you bring them home and you grind them up and you make your own French press.
well, I had a friend staying here once. His name was Grandfather Grey Wolf. He was Native American, obviously. Stayed here for quite a few weeks, and as you know, I don't really drink coffee. And every morning I'd hear the grinder going, and I'd smell this beautiful aroma would fill the house. Anyway, after a few weeks, I said, Grandfather, he goes, what? I said, can I taste that coffee you're making? I've smelled it for the last few weeks and it's just so beautiful. And he just looks at me and goes, are you sure? I went, yeah. So he gives me a small cup. Oh, that was the worst thing I ever did. For the whole day, I felt like I had some illegal drug and I was just buzzing around like this all day long. And I thought, I'm never having fresh ground coffee ever, ever again.
Yes, and I'm looking at chat and hey Polly, hey Joe, and Polly does have a good point. Chicory and dandelion were substitutes for coffee, and
Yeah,
even and again looping back into a previous yarn, the persimmon fruit, the seeds were ground up and they were substituted as coffee.
yeah. And I was actually going to mention chicory and dandelion in the herbal drink section because they are really good substitutes. Dandelion, especially roasted dandelion, substitutes if you don't want to stop drinking coffee, have something that tastes the same but doesn't have the same effect. Drink that. That's what I drink, chicory and dandelion. Um, yeah, we're the non-coffee drinkers coffee, I suppose you'd call it.
Well,
Um,
my ancestors, we were introduced to coffee, and originally they wouldn't drink it. They didn't trust it. Anything that you could not see through was not to be drank, and they labeled it Muckade Mushkiki Wabo is the name for coffee, and which basically means black water with ground up beans heated.
I
Is
would have
kind
sold
of
it like that.
the way that it's transcribed. And interesting enough, there are major health challenges with coffee because coffee is acidic,
Hmm.
and so you should be very careful on your use of coffee, and it is addictive. And in my experience, I found out through my constant thirst of knowledge pertaining optimal health that, from my opinion, from what I've learned about coffee, the best place for coffee is in a coffee enema in your rectal cavity because it stimulates the digestive system, and you do with that what you wish.
What I hear you, I follow, but
Well, I find
that 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 brings a thought up, possible question. Why does coffee make some people go like instantly, and then others coffee has no effect on their digestive system at all?
Well, that has to do with the acidicness. That more times than not, if somebody within 20, 30 minutes of drinking coffee all of a sudden has to go moo, which is another word for poo, or number two, or what I'm completely, absolutely full of, that they are more likely to be acidic. And that's why that happens. Because when the digestive system gets really too acidic, it's like flush the system, get it out.
So I mean, forgive my ignorance. I mean, this is new to me, and I I want to learn more about some things that I know and keep piling on to what I know to have more knowledge of it. But is that because the individual's body composition is more acidic and you're adding acidity from the coffee?
Yep,
So it's like overload?
exactly.
Okay. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, and like I say, I'm a hypocrite. I really enjoy my morning coffee, and I really was having a challenge with how much Caribou, not affiliated with Caribou Coffee at all, but how much I got into a yeah,
And
a almond milk mocha with dark chocolate
I mean, and
cacao.
I wonder if the addiction with that isn't entirely coffee. I wonder if the addiction in beverages like that comes from the sugar, because sugar is one of those deadly addictions. It's harder to kick than hard drugs.
Well, I'll agree to that to one extent. It, but the common practice of coffee is, I got to get up, I got to get going, tick tock, talk tick. It's getting thick. The coffee isn't enough, so I'm going to have another cup and another cup and another cup, and then eventually you start getting that coffee crash.
Yeah.
You start coming down from all of that rush, and then it's like, oh geez, it's only half the day at work, so I need some more coffee. And then all of a sudden people find out that when they're drinking coffee after 6, 7 o'clock at night, then it's like, why can't I go to bed? And then the next morning comes around and they've only gotten 2, 3, 4, 5, not enough hours of sleep. And lo and behold, what do they turn to? Cocaine or coffee.
Well, I mean, and it's not just necessarily coffee or tea that gets people going. It's caffeine in general, because I know people who don't drink coffee or tea, but they can't not wake up and not have their Coke or their Pepsi or their energy drink.
Oh, absolutely. When they learned about coffee and caffeine, they were like, wait a minute. Not everybody likes the taste of coffee.
Yeah,
Let's
I
add
don't.
sugar to it.
Yeah, I
Let's
really
add
don't.
sugar to it and some effervescence and a little of this and a little bit of that. And yay. And like the original Coca Cola, let's add some cocaine to it also.
I
Yeah.
got a song. I got a song about coffee and Coca-Cola. It's called Black Water. Black water, black water. Wouldn't drink it in the bush, wouldn't drink it from a puddle. But we go to the shop and buy it in a bottle. Black water. How insane is that?
Well, the Doobie Brothers wrote a song called Black Water.
Oh, did they? I don't really listen to mainstream music. What was I going to say? Oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
But herbal teas, which is really funny because you don't ever hear about North America or South America or the history of such places and Australia. However, you hear all about Europe. And unfortunately, the Anishinaabe people, we didn't drink anything but water. We couldn't figure out that if you heated some leaves of something in water, that it would give it a different taste. That's just way too smart for the indigenous people of North America to
Oh,
figure out. Womp, womp, womp.
yeah, not true.
Yeah. Well, we have a thing that we call it swamp tea, and
Swamp.
it's delicious, and it's called swamp tea because you get the leaves and ingredients from the swamp, and it's delicious. I enjoy it, and we have like cedar tea, and there's other different teas because it was like, hey, If you take this leaf and this root and that root and put it together and you boil it and you seep it, you're going to get something you might need for mashkiki, for your bimad wei wi yan. And so when coffee was introduced, from my learning, that it was frowned upon because they didn't or they couldn't see through it, and liquids that you couldn't see through. Because like even teas, most teas you can see through the tea. Some teas are rather dark, but that's just because when you steep it longer and with more of the ingredients, then it will get darker. But back to the Boston Tea Party, which Luna
Oh yeah,
asked of us.
we keep bypassing that.
Yep. So long ago, a bunch of Masons in a local lodge at a local pub, Samuel Adams, they got together and they said, hey, let's make a message to old King George. And they convinced a bunch of college students to dress up like heathens. I'm sorry, Native Americans. I'm sorry, Indians. I'm sorry, indigenous. I don't know, one of those peoples. Sorry, entities. So they all dressed up like Native Americans, went on board the British ships, and took the teas and threw it all in the river. Thus supposedly starting the whole rebellion against the king, which is ironic because if you look at the history of Boston, it was one of the largest shipping yards in the new America. And because of the inflated prices of products from Europe, the pirates would go and take all of these supplies, and then they would bring it to Boston, and on the black market, they would sell all of these goods. And this is another reason of the whole Boston and why there were so many British troops there and all of that, because they were trying to protect the ports and that with the pirates and trying to stop this underground commercialism, because then the money doesn't go back to old King George.
Well, it says here that by 1784, obviously they were trying to sort it out the whole time, the British government slashed taxes, making tea more affordable, and this put an end to the smuggling. So they could have done that in the beginning, but they were just greedy and they caused all that problems. That's what I see. But thank you for that, Nese, because when you hear the other side of the coin, as opposed to what they want us to hear, it's a very big different story.
Yep.
Tea. All right, 1834. After all that trouble was finished and everything started settling down, and what I realised reading this, tomorrow, any item in our life can become like tea and skyrocket and become really, really expensive, and one of those idle items. I call them idle items because everyone's up here. I want it. Instead of going, I won't drink tea till it's cheap. Well, wait, just wait a couple of years, it'll be all good. Anyway, the end of the East Indian Company monopoly on trade with China brought about the growth of tea in British colonies, such as India and Sri Lanka. I have trouble with these history things. Anyway, this was a more cost-efficient option as shipping time to Britain was reduced significantly. 1908. Thomas Sullivan, a New York tea merchant, started to send samples of tea to his customers in small silken bags. Some customers assumed these bags were to be used the same way as metal infusers and put the whole bag in the pot. Hence, the unintentional creation of the tea bag. Based on customer feedback, Sullivan developed the first tea bags out of gauze. I love it when things like that happen, accidentally created. 1920. Tea bags were developed for commercial production, initially from gauze and then later from paper. Hey, we got these fancy tea bags here. You've probably got them. They're from a place called T2, and they're like silk material. They're beautiful, and they're in a little triangle.
And
I
may I
definitely getting an
strongly,
appreciation of tea.
may I
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
strongly,
cut you off. Say go for it.
sorry, if I may strongly and humbly request that you do not look up the history of tea bags. Don't
Okay.
do it. Just take our word for it.
Uh, that's a bit of good advice.
1929, the first tea plantation was established in Malaysia during the British colonisation in Cameron Highlands. Today, tea is the most widely consumed beverage in the world, next to water. China, India, and Kenya are the top 3 tea producing countries. I know what alcohol was, but okay. Well, there's your little history on tea, and if we'll do on my page, I'll have pretty slides for you, but I can't do that. I don't know how to do it on this one. What else? Oh yeah, I got that. I'll show you that now. Actually, what have I done? The Aboriginal Tea Company that we have here, they've only just started, so I'm giving them a bit of a plug. Sorry, Jules.
Yeah, that's fine. And when you're finished, I'll share some coffee pictures.
And okay, first, they have a YouTube page called Australian Health and Wellness Remedies, and they're Rugenics. I'm going to pop that in the chat if I can. I'm going to try Jules. Oh my. Talk about technical problems, Jules. All right, I can't do that. I wonder if I can share my screen. And
I looked at my technical difficulties, square the eye, walked up to it, hugged it, and moved on. And it is what it is.
all right, there it is. That's the YouTube page. There's one on tea. I want to show you something real special. It goes for 2 minutes. And if I can share my screen, I'll just try to find out with your permission.
Yeah, absolutely. Do I need to? I shouldn't need to give you permission to share your screen.
No, here it is. You just gotta you gotta press the thingo.
There you go.
All right. So here's a little, I hope I don't get copyrighted for this, but they're our own mob here.
Oh, it's all good. You won't get copyrighted.
I just wanted to talk about this amazing bush plant, Jalanjing, which you harvest for us at Regenic. We've got literally thousands and thousands of customers that drink it in our native relaxation tea and native dreamtime tea, and they have the most, well, they claim the best night's sleep ever. I'm just curious, has it always been used for sleep by your people?
It was typical tribe, and now and then my granny gave it to us little boys when we couldn't get to sleep. They were naughty, but she gave us a cup of that. She said, "Boy, that when we were all ready to retire with the stars, she used to give us a cup of that and let it look us out."
We're giving brewing instructions to our customers, and I really think there's no better person to ask. I mean, your community's been drinking this tea for as long as you know. You steep the tea and then drink it, 20 minutes before bed, and you go out cold?
Yeah, you drink it and you feel it heavy, and then when you get drowsy, then you start making some wonderful so you go to sleep, and then you're in sleep.
And you have a deep sleep as well.
Yeah, you feel it come on you like that, and then, oh my God, so you feel tired, but it's just, the next day you feel like a new person, It's a medicine that works inside the body, we call it, The golden tea, we call it.
You call it the golden tea?
Yeah.
You've been with us over 5 years now. You harvest Gavinge for us, Jalanjing, native Mar as well. But the Jalanjing, the response we've had has just been out of this world. So like on behalf of our customers as well, I just want to say thank you for helping restore a better night's sleep in homes all across Australia. You really are changing lives, and I hope you can feel that impact that you're making too.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for helping people like that in situations like that, I guess you give it a go when you got it, and I see what it was on that tea. But that's well for a lot of people, people live on it.
There you go.
Totally
I hope
cool.
you understood that. What he was saying is when they were kids and they couldn't sleep, their mum made the tea and gave to them. I can understand. Yeah. Anyway, so check it out. Please check it out. They've got a whole list of all different native herbs in there if you want to know a little bit more about our stuff. And support this company. They just started. And because they're our mob, yeah, that's why I'm giving them this. So if I can get copyrighted, if you get copyrighted jewels, I'm going to tell them a letter, leave us alone because this is what we need in the world. They've got a whole range of stuff for a whole range of things. So that's what I call proper herbal teas. And like Nese's mob, yeah, they're proper herbal healing teas.
Well, you know,
And
the
thanks for letting me.
now the latest fad, you know, if you're having challenges falling asleep, is to have some tea before you go to bed and a Xanax, and that'll really help you fall asleep in the evening.
I thought it was just the chamomile that was called.
Chamomile.
Yes, valerian root, valerian, which doesn't smell that great, but it's a really good tea to knock you out to sleep.
Yeah, I was going to say that with herbal teas, they are actually medicine, right? They taste, a lot of them taste like shit, and you don't need to drink large quantities of it. You only need like 20 mils, 30 mils of like medicine, you know. And if you don't like it, because chamomile tea I think is beautiful, you can have a cup of that. I even mix it with my other tea, and that gives it that nice flavour, and it's good for you. But I've had herbal teas that taste like worse than dirt, and they literally taste like you're drinking dirt.
Yeah. So what's your favorite kind of tea?
My favourite tea? All right, for black tea, it's English breakfast. For herbal teas, I love chais and peppermint and chamomile. And actually, you know, if I can afford to drink the chai that I make with roasted dandelion, it's so much like real tea and coffee. I'll drink that all the time, but it's a little bit expensive to make all the mixture with everything that goes into it. So I drink black tea. I drink that all the time. That would be my favourite.
They're strangling emus in the back for the audience.
That's funny. Yeah, that would be my favourite tea. But I'll tell you, I drink too much tea. You can do too much of any good thing, right? Even water. I was drinking too much water at one stage and too much herbally tea. I just had to cut right down and overboard. But you get used to the taste and you actually like them and they're refreshing, especially in summer. I found if I have a coffee, because I used to drink coffee when I was young, don't get me wrong, I don't drink it anymore. But when I was young, I'd have it black with no sugar, just straight up coffee and water. And in the summer here, it gets very hot, as you know, and it tends to swell your body up and retain the fluid in your body. So I stopped drinking coffee because of that. And tea kind of does the same thing. So you're better off having things like iced peppermint teas and cold teas in here in summer than you are clean coffee itself. Even a lot of people have, what are they, thick shakes with coffee in them? You can get them from places, but it still has the same effect.
That's not coffee. That's kind of like dessert.
That's a coffee dessert. And I love the taste of coffee. I got to tell you that. I love coffee cake and stuff like that. I love the taste of it, but my body doesn't like the effect that it gives me. So if I drink a coffee, it'll probably be decaffeinated. And hopefully it's got no deadly chemicals in it.
Not the decaf I serve. It doesn't have any of that. It's a Brazilian Swiss water process is the decaf that I use. If I have to do decaf, that's usually what I do is get that.
Yeah. I found it funny that the monks drank coffee to stay awake, to meditate, And I'm thinking, what a roundabout way to get to do a spiritual thing, right? Because I'm looking at tea. When you drink a lot of herbal tea, it does raise your energy and it is more spiritual, okay? You can feel it in your body. But when I heard that, I'm like, hang on, isn't that like defeating the purpose? Drinking caffeine to stay awake, to meditate, when meditating is supposed to be a relaxing thing. It's like, hang on, that's really confusing. Why not just have a herbal tea?
Yeah, and I mean, and espresso, it's the same. It's a regular coffee bean. The technical difference between espresso and coffee is espresso, same bean. It's just extracted under pressure, so it
Oh,
has a different, stronger, more robust flavor to it. And I mean, in espresso, when it's extracted in the glass, it has layers. There's like the heart, the body, and the crema. So and the heart is where all of the good stuff is, the flavor.
see, that's different to tea. You know, you can have green tea, which is young tea. It's not black yet.
Yeah,
And that's
what is the technical difference between white tea, black tea, green tea, and even the oolong tea?
Spelling.
My kids drink oolong. They're mad on oolong tea. One of my kids has this blue tea. It is divine. It's like sitting with the Buddhist gods. Truly, it is blue. It's the most beautifulest blue I've seen, and it's flowers. They're flowers like, and they make this blue tea. And when you put lemon juice in the tea, it turns purple.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're all mad up on oolong teas and that. They bought all the stuff. They make them all at home by themselves. They are a little flashy, like, you know how you got all the different kinds of coffees and that. You can do that with the oolong teas and that. I think it depends. They're not. How can I say? It depends what you want. Tea, coffee, oolong teas. Like, everyone goes to what they want. I'd say try a bit of everything.
Well, you know, tonight. Sorry. Well, you know, in tonight's tribute to the show about having coffee, I thought I would have myself a cup of coffee just before the show, and so I had a really good free trade organic blend of French roast, which was lightly roasted, because that is one of my favorite ones. Because if you learn the difference between lightly roasted, medium roasted, and heavily roasted teas or coffees, I'm sorry, I'm just babbling on there, that it's a big difference, because if it's lightly roasted, it's going to have more caffeine. If it's medium roasted, less caffeine, and dark roasted, even less caffeine. But, you know, getting the caffeine inside you is really beneficial, especially when you need to be up and running and going really quickly and stuff. So I'll stop now.
Yeah, and the one thing I noticed, Nese, is that if American people drink caffeine, they might sound more like Aussies. Because you speed up.
That's why I like having a Quaalude with my coffee.
Speaking of coffee and pairings, I mean, apart from the obvious
Drugs are
pairing
bad.
with food, what is it? The caffeine that makes whatever, if it's coffee or tea, more enjoyable with whatever you're eating or doing, if whether it's a legal substance or an illegal substance. I mean, it just seems like caffeine pairs so well with substance. Like caffeine and nicotine go together.
Mm.
I mean, that's that's a very wide question, but perhaps it was
Yeah,
just.
but I never thought of that, because usually it's like when you drink alcohol, have a cigarette. I've seen that at the pub. You're right. People,
Yeah,
they have,
coffee and cigarettes.
yeah, they do. And it's like, and sugar goes along with that. Oh, look, we're starting to realise what an addictive peoples we really am.
I mean, I'm just sitting yarning and I'm absorbing the information that you and Nacy are sharing with me. And I just can't help but think in my diabolical mind, okay, just like modern times now, where they're loosening up authority on controlled substances such as cannabis and stuff. in the past.
They
And
are?
well, I
Look
mean,
at
in
my
the
fingers, they are
past.
stained. Look at my teeth, they are stained. The coffee and cigarettes stained me bad.
Yeah, my teeth from the tea. If
I
I
mean,
drink,
it was kind of like a way to like, okay, we'll give it to the people, we'll give it to the masses, and it was just one of those things that I think could have been beneficial if the powers that should not be, if they allowed these things to happen with evolving population. It was a way to kind of lull them or monitor them or guide them, introduce this so they'll, oh, if they have caffeine they'll be more productive, then we can do this and build companies or corporations, and it in my mind it kind of all ties into, I can't think of the right word, to power.
Well, if we're going to look at it from the powers that should not be perspective, anything and everything that has been induced into the general public through social conditioning is not for our gain and only for their gain, because the overabuse of caffeine, I'm a caffeine, I can't have more than, anyway, but the abuse of these substances, are adding more profit to the powers that should not be, because when we abuse all these substances, they affect our optimal health. When our health is affected, then what do? We go to the medical industrial complex and we say, hey, I want a quick fix. Instead of saying, well, if you go back to these herbal teas, then you'll get your quick fix better than just popping this pill.
Yeah.
Because once you start popping one pill, next thing you know, there's a side effect that needs another pill to take care of that side effect. And then you get another side effect. Next thing you know, you're taking 12, 13, 20 pills a day.
through that.
Yeah, you just made me think of around 1900 when coffee was getting its popularity. You had four big companies: Maxwell House, Folgers, U-Ban, Hills Brothers. When all those families, when basically they were bought out by corporations, what these manufacturers started doing is gradually taking out all of those 100% arabica beans, and they were blending them with the robusta beans. And the difference between the two, flavor wise, the robusta beans are a little bit more bitter, but when growing, the arabica beans, they're more prone to disease and illnesses on the plant itself, whereas those robusta beans, they're hardy, they thrive, they're more resilient. So gradually these, especially in America, companies like Folgers and Maxwell House, Hills Brothers, what they were doing, they were putting in those robusta beans till gradually they were like almost a half and half. And most Americans, because of the way the brewing methods back then, they couldn't really taste the difference. So for years, America had been drinking, or probably still is, drinking swill, not 100% Arabica beans, or not 100% Robusta beans.
Hey, you got my Arabic beans in my rusty beans. No, you got your rusty beans in my Arabic beans.
And there is no god of coffee. I guess that would be the person who's actually serving or bringing it to you. But there is a patron saint of coffee. Drogo was the patron saint of coffee. So I see Luna looking for something. Oh, she's muted.
Yeah, we're busy here. It's birthday time, and
Oh, that's
we're
right.
busy doing all different things for the next few weeks. That's why there was no G'day Saturday. Well, I'm going to change it to perhaps G'day Sunday for you fellas, because we got really busy time of year here. I was looking at gods and goddesses of tea. There's some in mythology, Japanese god of tea. Trust tea to have gods, eh? I'll just check that out, and I'll tell you something about tea, coffee, Jules. When you said how come tea came around, like tea was older than coffee. Coffee only grows in certain places, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the climate.
Three areas.
Yeah, well, I'd say that has a lot to do why it didn't come around till a while. Maybe the climate was a bit different for it not to grow everywhere, and there seems to be more of it now. And tea, it grows pretty well in a warmer, like different areas. It says here, Japanese, they have Inari is the god of various things such as rice, sake, and tea. Yeah, so there you go. They kind of had one. I should have done this yesterday. It shows you how unprepared I am. And it shows
You're
no matter what you know about something, there's always more to learn about it. That's what I always see, and that goes for everything, spiritual stuff a lot. So no matter what you know, there's always more to learn. And like a beautiful rose bush, we keep growing and growing. Who is the god of tea? Tai Kun. Oh, got to say this carefully. Excuse me. That's my chair. Tai Kuan Yin. Her name is Tai Kuan Yin. It means Iron Goddess of Mercy, but she is the god of tea, according to Chinese legend. There you go. There is this god of tea, goddesses and gods.
Nice.
So I'm kind of shocked.
Like, I think out of my, if I ponder it about tea, I'd have to say my favorite tea is the lowercase t.
Yeah, I got it. Duh. I had a song about tea and coffee last night. I was thinking about the show, and this silly song came in my head and just said, how'd it go?
Tea for two and two for tea.
No, it was like tea, coffee, tea, coffee, tea, coffee, tea. And then it was coffee, tea, coffee, tea, coffee, tea.
Yeah, after about 5 cups of coffee, I'll come up with a bunch of songs for coffee.
It was pretty cool. I sang myself to sleep. Tea, coffee, tea.
I don't know. I think one of the worst gigs I had working around coffee when I was working at an upscale, I guess you could call it, department store. I was working at Nordstrom and ended up for a brief stint in their espresso bar, where it was pretty cool. I mean, the only thing I liked about that job was the manual espresso machine, because there's 2 different kinds of espresso machines. You have the commercialized one now that's all automatic, that you just literally boop, 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 and it extracts itself. But a real espresso machine, you have this tam that you put your grinds in, and you mash it down with pressure, and then you put it in, and then you actually have to like manually do the steam, release the steam to steam the milk.
Yes, back in 1990, I became a coffee aficionado when we bought our own espresso machine, and it got to the point of where we had special espresso cups. And on Sunday afternoons, we would have a group of friends that would pop up, and we'd sit around and roll up some cigarettes of a special, unique blend of cannabis. And then they'd be, Nese, make us some coffees. And I would take orders, and I would go the whole 9 yards with the frothing and the foam and the cocoa powder and designs with the chocolate and honey. It was fun. An artist, a barista.
Yeah, I mean, I've got I've got some slides loaded up before we depart, and I can show you some latte art.
There's
Oh,
like competitions now,
I have
like
my flow chart.
national competitions of barista, and you
yeah,
know,
there. I've seen them. It's beautiful. I found one more little thing on gods of tea. Well, it's more goddesses, and the reason that it's more goddesses will make you laugh. And it says, unlike the gods who usually celebrated for making the tea bush, the gods made the bush, the goddesses of tea were more celebrated for their ability to heat water. And if you think of water is nothing special, try to make tea in cold water. And then it talks about Kuan Yin was another goddess of tea, and they think it was actually based on a real lady. And she used to rescue lost travellers in distress, take them home and give them black tea and oolong tea for
and then eat their
nourishment.
hearts.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry,
And
no
the one
offense
thing I
to
want to
the
mention, the
Chinese goddess
Japanese,
of
their
tea.
tea ceremony. If you've ever seen a Japanese tea ceremony and the elegance and the energy that goes into it, that tea would be healing no matter what was in that pot, with all that respect and everything and love that goes into that tea ceremony. Because it's a
Now you
big
got
thing.
me wondering. I wonder what would happen if we all rolled up and we went to the local church and we raided all the holy water and made tea or coffee with the holy water.
It would be worse than crossing the beams of our ectoplasma generator.
uh, actually, I have a joke. What was that joke? That's right. How do you make holy water? You boil the hell out of it.
Great dad joke. I had heard that one
Oh,
before,
you'll
but I
have
forgot about it.
plenty of coffee down here with us.
But holy water and using tea, yeah, that's funny. All right. Okay, so there's a bit on, I suppose if you wanted to look at the spirituality of teas besides the healing aspects and what it does for your body and how it helps to bring you up to a higher level physically, mentally, spiritually. That's a whole thing. That's something you got to start drinking them to experience that. And you can't have a herbal tea and then a coffee and think that it's going to work, because it don't work like that. You got to not have coffee if you don't want to have caffeine, and have your herbal teas.
Interesting enough that when you do a lot of herbal remedies, that it will nullify it if you drink coffee with a lot of herbal remedies.
Yeah, well, it's like that. There's a lot of things. If you have one and then have something else just after it, it can nullify it. And other things work the other way. If you have one thing and you have something else after it, it actually bonds together and works better. So you just
Like
got to know.
vitamin C and mushrooms.
Vitamin C and mushrooms. There you go. Actually, I thought vitamin C was associated with something else, but that's okay. It's vitamin C and that's right. Vitamin C in mangoes and a certain herb. If you have them together, it's supposed to have a better effect. And I think it's cannabinoid.
Yeah, and be careful because not all herbs are cool with utilizing other things.
Some herbs are very, very strong. Just don't drink any herbal tea. You know what you're doing. There's things like chamomile, peppermint, ginger, all them basic things that you eat in general life anyway. They're okay, but then there's a group of herbal teas that have profound effects on your body, and they're for healing, strictly healing only. And you've got to go to someone that knows what they're doing, and you have them amounts for a certain period of time, and then you stop. It's different to having chamomile and peppermint or oolong. They're just different. So yeah, if you want to try herb tea, start with the peppermints, oolong, Chai, is it
Yeah,
beautiful? All that stuff, yeah, beautiful.
most
Go.
definitely the tea market is just as popular as the coffee market.
It is
Not
now.
comparing, but you can walk down your local grocer and half the aisle is tea and the other half is coffee. An entire aisle. And
It
among
is.
those teas, you've got your different tea manufacturers, but there's a specific tea for this medical ailment. There's out it's out there, and I need to like look into teas more.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, thank you for bringing this information. I mean, it was something that I brought a little bit of knowledge about coffee, but I really came to learn about tea.
Well, I came to learn about coffee.
In the middle.
I didn't know like how caffeine had come around. That was really interesting. Here in Australia, when the settlers come, black tea they had was a really important part, because when you're out camping and that and it gets cold at night, even though we're a hot country, it can get cold here. You want your tea, and it's gone into our people as well, because you can go out there and you'll be at a gathering of black fellas, and there'll be a billy of tea on the fire, and I've got to show you what a billy is, a billy can. Oh, hang on. Oh.
Okay, so we're learning all kinds of stuff.
These are our billy cans, and my brother Donnie was here. He's got one too. So they're our billy cans. I got one with a spout on it for my tea, and you pop it on the hot coals in the fire. The ones without the spout, and you make your tea in. There's a certain way they used to do. You can't do it with this one because it's got a spout, but you put your tea and your water in, and they'd spin it around. They'd hold it by the handle and spin it around like that, and that would force all the tea leaves down to the bottom of the thing, and then you could pour your tea out.
Interesting, and I say that's interesting because looking at that, it has me think of those old coffee percolators from the 60s and 70s that were the way that those worked is there was the pot and you heated it and you had your grounds and they would come up and they would circulate and they would go over and over again, which is the same concept of you slinging that tea. So the more we're yarning, I'm realizing there are a lot of similarities between coffee and tea, more than I thought, in the sense that some of the brewing methods are the same. The base with tea is water, and same thing with coffee. So, I mean, there are differences, but there's more similarities with coffee and tea than I thought, which is kind of interesting.
Another trick that we have, it's got not much to do with coffee and tea, but we use the billy, the same thing. You can cook a chicken and stuff in it. You heat it up and put coals around it, or you can put stuff in it in aluminium and put coals around it and hang it in the tree so nothing will eat your food. But this billy can, which is mostly known for our tea, is actually really diverse. We use it in lots of things, but that's a modern day thing. And you know what? I used to have this on my stove, and I dropped it, and it got a bump in it. And because our stoves are those flat, all your cookware has to be perfectly flat. It won't go on the stove anymore, so I've got to leave it just for outside, unfortunately. There's my billy can. And if anyone ever comes over here and has a campfire with us, that's the billy can we'll drinking tea out of on the fire. Donnie, I'll bring it with me when I finally get to your house. So that's my bit on tea. Hope you enjoyed it. Wish it was a bit more spiritual.
I did.
Kind of is, and you know, as you see, we got our own actual traditional teas, but we didn't have billy cans. Not back then. We do now. It's been very interesting, actually.
Yeah. So.
And you had some artwork for us, Jules.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize that we have been going on for almost an hour and a half.
Could we have a short tea break?
Yeah, I just got unless Nese's got some more to add, I just have some like closing like slides, just memes. It's nothing that's groundbreaking or earth shattering, but yeah, if you want to grab whatever, grab some tea, grab some coffee.
Tea with a P.
Ah, TP. Hey, don't indigenous people have those, they say? Just kidding, I know. Sorry. I mean, then again, I mean, it's probably a good thing the stream is winding down because my juvenile humor is coming out. It's like, I don't know what it is that when I hear TP, it just inside of me is like,
Well, it's a dwelling for some indigenous people in North America.
Yeah, I've seen pictures and I did some looking into TPs several years ago, but they were ahead of their time. Those were the way that they were set up inside and the way that the heat and everything moved and everything. Very, very interesting. I mean, it just and people don't talk much about those now. It's kind of it's this timeline we're on. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my screen ready so when Luna gets back, I just have some like memes that I know you can't physically see, but I will describe them to the best of my ability.
Sounds good. Describe away.
I'm back.
Sweet.
Sorry.
So,
Old lady's bladder. And you saw me have that giant cup of tea.
yeah, so I don't know if you can see my screen or not because I'm
Nope.
still with this.
You got to share it.
Ah, there we go. Any? Can you guys see it now?
Yep.
Nope.
Sweet. All right. So,
Can. No, they can't.
true. All right. So yeah, just I mean, this nothing like I'm saying nothing groundbreaking, earth shattering, or anything, but it's like coffee makes good memes. So they say I have a picture of a tribal cat. It looks like with a cup of coffee, and all it says he's got this like look on his face, and it says because murder is wrong.
And you know, I know something funny. I've got a cat just like that at my back door meowing at the moment.
And this is the second picture, this slide. It's just a picture of the actual coffee cherry on the vine. And it actually does have flowers. Coffee plants do actually produce beautiful looking flowers. They're small, but they remind me of like a honeysuckle. They have those long white kind of spindly looking leaves, and in the middle it looks like the honeysuckle.
It's pretty.
And I have wonderful friends who send me coffee memes. So I have one of Little House on the Prairie, the family, and it says when you make your own coffee at home instead of going to Starbucks.
It's funny.
My personal flow chart. This one is a picture of a man holding out his arm, and from his fingertips, there's energy there, and it says how coffee works. Coffee, you consume it inside in your stomach and everything. It mingles, and then the effect is energy. It's like magic. Do we lose Nese?
Yeah, we lost Nese.
I probably bored him.
Gee, we're doing well. There was no problems with the connections. Oh, look at that. Coffee bean.
Will you drink coffee with me?
Oh, that's funny. Oh.
Before coffee? After coffee.
okay.
And that one's hysterical. And this is
Oh, wow.
this was some of my latte art. I don't know what it is, but it just looked like an ET to me.
It does.
And I just have like one or two more, and then that's another one.
Oh,
Kind of,
looks like a seahorse to me.
yeah, it looks like a seahorse, but it kind of reminds me of a unicorn a little bit.
Yeah, kind of.
Definitely has like the horse the horse head face, and then that one, the whole like. This is what Nese was talking about earlier, and now that makes more sense, more on a scientific
Yeah.
scale. The whole coffee and poop relationship.
All right, girl, come on. That's my girl there. Hey, they don't
Oh,
Sorry. Off you go. Come on, sweetheart. Oh,
So,
look at
yeah.
her. Good girl.
that's your Roxy.
Yeah, that's
It
essence.
was up a couple of times, but yeah. I got a message that says Nese's device is not connected, but we've been going for like an hour and 36 minutes and 20 seconds, but who's counting?
Yeah.
Really, the computer says it right there. So
Shy.
yeah, I mean, thank you, and thank you, Nese, for coming on and talking about tea and coffee with me. Thank you for answering some questions I had, and thank you for giving me some thoughts on things that I didn't think of.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show, Jules, and thank you for the knowledge.
It was my pleasure. So
great. And it was good to hear from Alan again.
Yeah, well, we should hear from him fairly soon. But again, I mean, before we roll out, I know you've got a channel you got up and going. Anything coming on deck?
Yeah. So it's just Luna. At the moment, I'm just running something once a week. The cat show. No. And it's similar to this. I just try to present something interesting for all of us, something we enjoy, something we don't know and we can learn about, or we already know and we want to know more about.
Yeah.
You never know. I'm just, a bit about my culture. I like to chuck stuff in there because I know that not a lot of people know about that. And I hope I'm a good advocate for my culture. And yeah, I hope some interesting.
I would say you are, because I can't wait to learn more of the tea, the Rugenics.
Yeah, Rugenics. Yeah. Like I said, they're only new, but good on them. And yeah, it's kind of the first mob we've got like that actually doing it right. It's taken us. We're a bit slow down here. We're a bit behind the times. Isn't that weird? We're like in the future, in your future. I'm coming to you from the future.
Yeah, you are coming to me from the future, but you're so far ahead of us in the future that we're just now catching up.
Yeah, but things here are behind everyone else. Like when I was growing up, as in music, fashion, all that kind of stuff that you had over there, we were way, way, way behind. And by the time it got here, it was old hat for you fellas. And yous had something new. And I didn't learn that until I was about 16 when I actually left this country and went overseas to have a look. And looked around and was like, wow, you've got all this new stuff. We're way behind you, but yet we're in the future. That's what I find weird. Yes, and I talk to old people that come to this country when they were young and weren't born here, and they said they felt like they were going back in time. That was like 70, 80 years ago. They felt like they were going back in time, and that's how far behind we were, but yet we're in the future. So it's a time paradox. We got Nese back, yay!
Yeah, Nese's back.
Yeah, and on my show, we'll have Jules and Nese. They're my regular guests. And you, if you want to come on, depending on what we're talking about. Usually at the end, we'd love you to come on. And
yeah, I'm not sure if anybody is here with us because this is it's kind of last minute, but shout out to everybody. We had Joe stop by and some woman named Luna stop by.
Oh, crazy girl, look out for her.
And yeah, and Polly was here.
Oh, hey, Polly. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I did a show for Polly because he loves flowers, and I hope to do a show in the future actually with Polly and not for Polly because we did a show for him.
Yeah, I'm looking for a good yarn with Polly on pop culture and.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's not my area, but I'll.
Oh, because yeah, I mean, I got some interesting news that came from the '80s that ties into something. I'll tell you about it on the other side, but yeah, I mean, shout outs to everybody.
Yeah.
Those that aren't here: Connie, Kevin Green, Malaya, Leslie.
Yeah,
Who am I forgetting?
KBS Discord.
Yeah,
all the
KBS Discord.
We don't forget our friends. Okay. Hey, what else? I just got one more question about coffee and tea.
Yeah.
Mostly coffee before we go. For all the coffee connoisseurs, back in that, because you mentioned the 80s and that, I'm sure you drank coffee back then. Has it got better or worse? Has it improved or has it kind of declined like a lot of other things? What would you say in the taste and flavour? Or is it
the taste and flavor?
You know,
I would think that coffee has improved since like the late 70s, early 80s, in the sense that around that time, here in the States, you had all those four major coffee companies that had the monopoly on the industry, and they were putting those Robusta beans in, and they kept putting that in so frequently and changing the formula up. And up until then, that's the only coffee that Americans knew. They only knew the commercial Maxwell House, Folgers, those coffees. And then when these artisan coffee blends started sourcing beans and introducing those 100% gourmet Arabica beans, that kind of changed the coffee industry because you were able to get different beans. You were able to actually taste the different notes and the smell and the nuances of coffee that came from Africa compared to coffee that came from Indonesia, like Sumatra, or coffee that came from Colombia. You were able to distinguish and you were able to have different coffee varieties and not the same thing. And then with those flavors, those origins of coffee, they're still blended, but a lot of them still are single origin coffees. And with those coffees like that, the French press is one of those brewing methods that you can really taste all the flavors in those notes. The way I imagine the way that the farmer or whoever the taste tester wanted you to hit on.
sounds nice, but I'd have to have one under supervision. If I had one under supervision.
So I have a coffee in my pantry that if and when we ever get to congregate and have coffee at a table with all the vices, and if it be called sin, then whatever it is, most people just know that as a good time. So if we're ever sitting and having a good time, I will make you some coffee and I will serve you a pastry that the coffee by itself is coffee, the pastry by itself is a pastry, but when they're mixed together, it's like eating Fruit Loop cereal.
Wow.
It's the way that those tasting notes and those taste receptors, the way that coffee affects foods and everything, and certain coffees pair better with different things. It's one of those, and I can always kind of get a good idea of how something is going to pair by the aroma, by the smell.
Yeah, like I said, as long as you give me a couple of hours of supervision just after the coffee, I'll give you something.
I'll give you some herbal tea after the coffee.
And come back down.
But yeah, Nese, have you got anything you would like to add?
Yes, consult a doctor before taking coffee and putting it in your anal cavity in an enema.
That's good advice.
But try it. You only live once. And do not drink the coffee when you expel it.
That's even better advice.
Oh, wait, so you're saying it's not going to be like that animal that pukes it out and it's better?
All right, so with that being said, I'm going to press this end button, but anybody watching from the future, thanks for sticking with us. It's been fun. And again, my thanks to Nese and Luna for joining me on the Bittersweet. Hope you guys have a fantastic one.
Peggy, Schminobi Madaziwe Wian. Toodles.
Toodles.
Yalo.